Good afternoon. Welcome to Columbia Law School. My name is Michael Gerard. I'm a member of the faculty of the law school and director of the Sabin Center for Climate Change Law. I want to extend a very warm welcome to India's Honorable Union Minister for the Environment, Forests, and Climate Change, Mr. Prakash Javadekar. He's a respected figure in Indian politics, has been very active in Indian politics for longer than 4 decades. The minister is also a member of the Rajya Sabha, the upper house of the Indian Parliament. He is the national spokesperson for the BJP, which is the current ruling political party in India, and he holds the portfolio of parliamentary affairs. The minister is a strong proponent of sustainable development, and we are especially honored to have him with us this afternoon. He is an advocate of action on climate change, and we will be hearing more about that. And the importance of climate change to the current government is highlighted by the fact that they renamed the ministry from Ministry for Environment and Forests to Ministry for Environment, Forests, and Climate Change. I'm also pleased to have with me up front this afternoon Professor Jeffrey Sachs, who is the director of Columbia's Earth Institute. Given India's importance in the international climate change negotiations and the upcoming Paris summit, we are very eager to hear about India's role in addressing climate change and India's expectations for the upcoming Conference of the Parties in Paris. But first, I would like, as a token of our esteem, to present the minister with these flowers. So, thank you so much for that. And I now give you the minister.
Yeah. It's always a delight to be with the students and faculties and experts, think tanks in American University, and I wanted to be in Columbia University, and this time it happened, and I'm so very happy. Today, world is discussing the whole climate change issues. Yesterday, UN Secretary General had organized and called us for a working lunch. And in that working lunch, nearly 25 heads of government, presidents and prime ministers, and few of our ministers were there. And the menu card I have brought, it starts with spent grain bread, squash seed oil. Spent grain is grain mash left over from brewing or distilling process, often composted or used for livestock feed. That was given to us. Squash seed oil, unrefined vegetable oil made from roasted squash seeds, which processors typically throw away. The salad was landfill salad. It was made out of vegetable scraps, rejected apples and pears, and chickpea water. Vegetable scraps were unwanted vegetable scraps, stalks, and outer leaves salvaged from waste streams of large-scale food processors. And chickpea water, the liquid drained from a can of chickpea. Then the main course was burger and fries. Burger was made from off-grade vegetables, repurposed bread bun, bruised beet ketchup, pickled cucumber scraps, and cow corn fries. And it was off-grade, below a commercially recognized standard of quality. Farmers, processors, and retailers often discard or do not harvest produce if it does not meet market specifications. And cucumber scraps, ends removed by the pickle industry to allow for uniform slices. So that is what cow corn, aka field corn, different from sweet corn. This crop does not feed people directly but represents about 99% of the 90 plus million acres of corn grown in the US. Okay, so that was also for livestock. And last was the dessert, coca husk custard. It was cascara chantilly, nut press cake cookie, and cocoa husk, the outer shell of cocoa beans typically discarded. Then cascara, the dried skin and pulp of the coffee cherry, which are often dumped into rivers or left to rot after the seed beans have been removed. And nut press cake, the material left over after pressing nuts for oil. After my lecture, I'll be having lunch with them. I hope today this is not lunch meal for Colombia. I take it to a new, this gives a message. This is important. Though symbolic, it gives a message of don't waste, and we are wasting 28% of our food production, which makes land use changes, and there are serious issues. And to that end, a symbolic but significant message comes out of this menu card. Second, I take you to Pope visit. And Pope has said, well, I liked his speeches, and he said in nutshell, throw away the throwaway culture. If I have read him properly, if I have listened him properly, that's the message Pope has given. And now I read our Prime Minister Modi's some quotes he delivered in UN speech. Because I saw Pope's speech and Narendra Modi's speech, and it's the same thing they are talking in their own. And what Modi ji is saying, when we speak only of climate change, there is a perception of our desire to secure the comforts of our lifestyle. When we speak of climate justice, we demonstrate our sensitivity to resolve to secure the future of the poor from perils of natural disasters. In addressing climate change, it is important to focus on solutions that can help us reach our goals. We should forge a global public partnership to harness technology, innovation and finance to put affordable, clean and renewable energy within the reach of all. Equally, we must look for changes in our lifestyles that would make us less dependent on energy and more sustainable in our consumption. I hope that developed world will fulfill its financing commitments for development and climate change without in any way putting both under the same head. So what all these three messages, the menu, speech of Pope and speech of Narendra Modi, emphasize on basically two things. I'll just brief on that and then I'll like to take questions. But essentially they are talking about lifestyles. And lifestyle is one issue which we need to understand and discuss because we have only one planet. The latest Earth Overshoot report, which is presented 2 months ago, has clearly mentioned that we cannot go on unsustainable lifestyle because the consumption pattern, conspicuous consumption pattern, extravagant consumption pattern will require 6 planets, and we don't have the luxury of having that. By resolution, we can reach an agreement. By parliament speeches, we can make documents. As he is legal expert on climate change, he will draft good legal sustainable draft. But it is true that we have only one planet. And India will present its INDCs on first night, that's the last day, because it's on the evening. We wanted to make it on the evening of our father of nation, Mahatma Gandhi, because when world was not discussing climate change, he was. He said that the earth is not inherited property of our generation. It's loaned from future generations. And therefore, we must give them back at least the earth we inherited or making it little better. So that's the job the present generation and your generation have on hand. And therefore, unless we talk of lifestyles at some stage and not continuing with the extravagant lifestyle, but having a sustainable lifestyle. And sustainable lifestyle is not that deprive everything, put off all lights. No, you have more energy efficiency, but also it means that only technology and science won't bring all the changes required to mitigate the challenge of climate change. You will have to change from within. And I'm happy that youngsters, once sensitized properly, come out with, they come and tell me, oh, now I have become veggie. I said, why? I'm not. So they said, no, because they give me calculation that if I eat meat, 1 kilo of meat means so much of corn and food grain consumption, so much of water, so much of land use. So it's one's inner conviction which brings out our lifestyle. India is not part of the problem of the climate change. As you know very well that climate change is a historical evolution. If today we are experiencing 0.8 degree temperature rise, it is not because today we are, all nations are, because of hundreds of years of carbon emission done after industrial revolution and which is still in the air, that has caused climate change today. And therefore, India's share in cumulative emissions in 1850, right from industrial revolution, is only 2.8%. That's very important. Our today's, because ultimately it boils down to what is sustainable. My per capita emission is just 1.6 tons per year annum. The developed world's average is in the range of 10 tons per annum. My energy consumption, 30% people don't have energy right now. And Modi ji has decided to reach every village. 18,000 villages are still left out. We will connect all these villages in next 1,000 days. And next 1,000 days, we will give 24/7 electricity to all. This in America will say, oh, that happens here. There is no other thing. But that's the fact of life. That is the deprivation which we have inherited because we were under colonial rule. And how nations got prospered, there are 4 ways. First way to prosperity is what colonial exploitation did. And by exploitation they became rich. The second is the natural resource endowment as we experienced in Middle East. So they are naturally endowed and therefore they are rich. The third path was India and China, which have done great adaptation skill, reverse engineering, cheap labor, cheap production, and therefore we could. And the fourth sustainable way is what US, I always appreciate US role because innovation ultimately finds and brings you a real prosperity, a sustainable prosperity. I was with Steve Jobs in 1998 for 2 days as I was heading a working group of my government on IT for masses. And in that, that time iPhone was not there. So he was showing that handheld. That time handheld was only for doing phone, receiving call and doing SMS. No more extra features were there. But he was telling his dream, which was thinking that he is daydreaming. But he made it possible that in handheld he brought all features together and made it more useful. So innovation is the real value addition and that's a sustainable way of development. But there, my last point again, that we must therefore think of sustainable consumption pattern also, because then only we will win this war of climate change. We are also talking of climate justice. I am just giving two new concepts which India is putting on the table. Climate justice is basically a right of every person on the globe, 7 billion people, to have progress. Because poorer people have more aspirations now. Poorer sections world over have aspiration, and therefore there is a rush for education. The quality of education is a perennial problem in many countries. But people want to learn. So girls are going, everybody is going, and everybody wants to be educated. That equity means everybody's right is equal. And therefore, per capita consumption is what ultimately matters, because everybody has a right to grow. Because somebody has previously exploited, now you can't put restrictions on somebody else's. It has to be in a reasonable fashion. And as I said, our cumulative emission is just historical cumulative is 2.8. Current emission, we are just 1.88 billion, just 6%, 5 to 6% of the current emissions. And people talk about China, US joint statement entered into last year. And last week also there are two statements. Let me quantify it. China and US will converge in 2030 when it will peak at 12 tons per capita per annum. India will never reach there. India will never reach there. So my per capita emission is today below 2 tons and will never go beyond average of developed world's emission. And that's the case. On that basis, we have built our INDCs, which are comprehensive, which are ambitious enough, and which are sustainable. And every climate action has a cost. Every climate action has a cost. If you are replacing a normal bulb with a tube with a CFL, it costs more. But if you are putting it LED, it costs little more. And that cost, ultimately, who will pay? We have accepted that polluter must pay. And that's why finance and technology are critical component of Paris deal. And we are putting forth this. I'm happy that world at least has accepted this as a concept. But let us see how it happens. Next 75 days are exciting, and I'm eternal hopeful. So there will be an agreement in Paris. We have made a very great length by adapting a new thing that in Kyoto only Annex 1 countries were mandated to take action. Now, all the countries of the world have decided to take action as per their respective capacities. And that's a good thing. We have started on the path of green growth. We have started to mitigate the climate change challenge unitedly. And I think that's the great beginning. There is no scope for sliding. We will go with renewed targets at an interval. And I think world will mitigate the challenge, because I believe two things. That's my last point. If human intervention has caused climate change, human actions will solve the puzzle. I am very sure, because I believe in human intent and human intelligence. They come out with solutions. Technological, scientific, and behavioral. All three are required. And to that end, we are putting our new ideas and our action plan, and we are walking the talk. The first emission gap report presented by UNEP has said and certified that India has performed best in comparison to many developed countries, and we will walk under the leadership of Modi on that sustainable path for future also. Thank you and all the best.
Thank you, Minister. Before I open it up for questions, I'd like to invite Professor Sachs to say a few words.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Minister, thank you very much for being with us. We're really happy to have you here and look forward to the discussion. Thank you for raising the issue of behavior and diet. And I can tell you a story. When I was in India once several years ago, I was with a Chinese colleague of mine. And we were walking around, and of course, in India, you see animals everywhere, monkeys jumping on buildings and so forth. And my Chinese colleague was just completely dumbfounded because he said, in China, you would have grabbed any of them and put it in the pot for dinner. We eat anything. And the fact that the animals are still around in India and living in the temples and walking in the streets and so forth is also culture. And I think that it was really shocking for him to see. It does raise a couple of questions that I wanted to ask and pose for you. Both India and China are so densely populated and among the most crowded places in the world, in the rural areas and in the urban areas. And this makes the vulnerability extraordinarily high, of course. And I wonder if you could say something about the areas of vulnerability that you're most concerned about, not only climate change related, but just all of the issues of fresh water access, urban versus farmland choices. India's in such a stressed, crowded condition that even placing factories is extraordinarily difficult, as we know from many famous battles recently over whether farmland encroachment should be allowed in the name of further industrialization and so forth. So that's one area that I would like to ask you about. The second is on the question about the long-term energy scenarios for India. One of the things that my colleagues and I have been emphasizing, and we've had a project at the UN called the Deep Decarbonization Pathways Project, and that has been to encourage governments to put forward scenarios for long-term decarbonization, not only for the INDCs, which are up to 2030, which is too short, but up to 2050 or even 2070. Because the IPCC basically says that the global carbon budget for a 2 degree C world, not a certain 2 degree C world, even just a 66% 2 degree C world, means that we have to reach essentially zero carbon by 2070. So in terms of convergence, all countries have to converge to near net zero emissions in the second half of the 21st century. And the IPCC's main 2 degree C run, which is RCP 2.6, it's zero in 2070. Getting there is extraordinarily difficult and requires major transformations to renewable energy, nuclear energy, perhaps carbon capture and sequestration, certainly electrification of vehicles, and major industrial transformation. Most governments haven't really looked at such deep transformation plans. The United States has never made one, for example. It's been too politically sensitive to even put such a scenario on the table. But in the U.S.-China agreement last week, both countries said we will now table deep decarbonization pathways to 2050, and we encourage other governments to do the same thing. So there's been a kind of breakthrough in the White House, maybe because he's not running for re-election, but President Obama has said we'll put a deep pathway on the table, and China has said the same thing. And I want to encourage India to do it, and if I may use some chalk and a blackboard just for one moment. We're at 2015, and let's say at 2070 we have to be at zero, and the average of the industrial countries is going, say, from 8-something down to, and the U.S., by the way, is way up there, and the U.S. has to come down here or even more steeply like that. And then India is here, and India wants to grow, so it's going to grow, and the statement is you'll never cross that line. So one scenario would be something like this, and then like that. And that would be consistent with the statement, we'll never cross the high income line. But another path could be like that or like that. And analyzing which of these is right for India is really a good project. Because this one keeps to the commitment, but it may involve undoing a lot of capital that you've put in place to get up to here, and maybe that one is the one that really is the cost minimizing way to grow and get to 2070. So my comment and question would be, what kind of scenario do you see that would be consistent with the 2 degrees C budget? And what is India's energy mix of the future? Because it's a big problem. You're a coal country, and not such great wind power. You've got some hydropower in the north, quite a bit, but not enough. You've got some solar in the deserts. So I just wanted to ask, what's the long-term pathway?
Please. Thank you, Professor. I'm very happy because this gives me an opportunity to tell you, India under Narendra Modi has launched the ambitious and largest renewable program for next 7 years, and then we'll continue it for each 7-year cycle. But what we have put in right table is 175 gigawatt, 100 gigawatts of solar, 60 gigawatts of wind, and we were not allowing earlier offshore wind, but we have now, cabinet has cleared it, and 10,000 of biomass, 5,000 of small hydro, and beyond that in non-fossil fuel category, our nuclear energy program and big hydro, all are non-fossil fuel. And I can say with pride, my INDC guarantee is at least doubling the non-fossil fuel sector, non-fossil fuel energy generation in next 10 years, 10, 15 years. So that's how we are doing our own bit. But it has a cost. It has a cost. And therefore, have you got the chart? This is, without any aid, this will happen. This, if finance and technology support by those who have it. This will happen if the world moves according to Indian proposal of finance, technology and lifestyle changes.
Yes.
So these are the 3 things we have.
Excellent. Excellent.
Second, let me tell you, every country has its geophysical reality. I am 17% of the population of the world. We have also 17% of world's cattle population. Not only human, but cattle also. And both require water, food, and therefore land. And we have only 2.5% of the world's land mass. So 17% of human population, 17% of cattle population, and only 2.5% of world land mass, with only 4% fresh rainwater resources. So I can't do shale gassing where I have to put all fresh water into the earth to take out the gas. I can't. I don't have. That also is a natural limitation. But we have only 1% of forest. We want to grow it. And we will grow it, the carbon sink. But this is the reality under which my per capita income is 1/10 of US or even 1/12 of US. And developed world's average, it is 1/10. My energy consumption is 1/10. In my country, nobody uses dryer for drying the clothes. We do it in sunlight. We do it by solar energy. So in every way, we save on
You've
many
already got
things.
solar.
So it's not just poverty. So it is not just poverty. It is the value system, is the cultural inheritance which we have. That we do. Our houses, particularly rural houses, not the modern houses which we have copied from Western countries, but the original houses, they keep you cool in summer and hot in winter without AC. Countries have 700 cars per 1,000 population. I have only 13. So it's a very different world which I am living. But my people want car. I want to develop. I have a right to develop. And therefore my new slogan is vacate the carbon space which you have occupied for centuries together for us to park our development car there. So vacate the carbon space. That's our thing. Energy is here. Decarbonization. There are three answers. Decarbonization won't happen because somebody resolves that by 2070 or 2015 we will decarbonize. Science and technology must produce the alternatives. Unless they are affordable alternatives, it can't happen overnight or by somebody saying or making a speech. But I am doing in my way. I have started doing in my way. Andaman Islands use nearly 100 megawatts of power every day. For that, 3 lakh liters of diesel is burnt every day. It's a waste. And it is 93% of forest area, the whole island. What I am doing is now, from the wood waste, this year we have started 1 megawatt at 3 places, 1 megawatt. So, within next 3 or 4 years, after this year's trial, we will completely do away with diesel generation of power and will make it a green power. The green island will produce green power. That's India, the way we want to grow. And it's not about, because I'm a big country with small islands, 60 of them where people are staying. So I told small island developed countries that I am also your part. Because if you are seeds, I am beads. Because I am big country but with small islands. So that's how we are. We have different ecology. Himalayan states, there are 10 states which have Himalayan ecology, 10 states which have coastal ecology. There are 60 islands where people are staying. There are 2 states which are desert. There are 10 states which are forest. And there are 5-6 states which are upland area. So every diversity has a different adaptation plan. And we have prepared a comprehensive adaptation plan building resilience into the system for each state differently, separately. And that summation is our national action plan. So this is what you asked. But now I like to answer.
So we'll open up for questions now.
And now I'll be the short question, the short answer. Come. So that doesn't mean long answers is a long question is long answer, no.
So my name is Shania. I'm a student at the Management Science program at the engineering school. I just have one question with regard to what role does nuclear power play in our immediate future? Because we reduced it from, I think, 63, I forgot the unit, to 27 this January for some reason. And especially with recent highlights on the GE talks falling apart and things like that. So what role does the nuclear energy play in our immediate future? So are we reducing it? Are we increasing it?
We are increasing, and presently it was reduced not out of conviction but out of compulsion, because people were not ready unless we had a deal, civil nuclear deal, to give us enriched uranium. And now that is available, so we are buying from all places. Though we did treaty with US that opened our doors for us, and we are buying from wherever it is available affordably. So we are increasing, and we have many new nuclear plants in pipeline. and we are taking all safety precautions, but also we are going ahead with nuclear because it's a clean energy.
Good afternoon, Minister. Thanks for coming here. Pleasure hearing you and hope you recovered from yesterday's meeting.
Yeah.
And thanks for being here. So, a quick question to you would be with regard to two questions and short ones. One is we've seen a lot of campaigns from the government which puts the onus on the individual, and I think this is one more. So we'd like to understand what is the government doing at a broader level, and I'm talking about investment in new technology, which is what you spoke about earlier. And second is with respect to government's clearances for industrial land, as in clearing out forests and the clearance process which got shortened. That seems to be in slight contradiction to the overall approach that you spoke about. So
I'll give both. First, individual, because unless the person changes from inside, the revolution has to be here, and then it works out on the field. So, strengthening people and awakening their consciousness and rising their sensibility level is a program of nation building. Unless people participate, it won't happen. Air problem, air pollution. See, every problem there is a citizen partnership. Air pollution you can deal with scientifically, then you can do it with all implementing agencies working close coordination. But let me tell you, my government wants to prepone the timetable for migrating to Euro 6. We are on Euro 4 today. It pollutes. So Euro 4 to Euro 6, we want to even avoid the step of Euro 5 and straight away transfer. My petroleum ministry is ready, my transport ministry is ready. The auto industry is not ready. They are lobbying hard, don't press us for preponing. I said you are manufacturing Euro 6 compliant cars in India and sending it to US and Europe, and you are not giving us, they said it's a driving condition and road and so many. There are always reasons for saying no. So that's the fact. So we want to awaken the people, make them Clean India and Green India mission. Unless people participate, it won't happen. In air pollution, unless they start avoid congested lanes, unless they follow lane discipline, unless they maintain their own vehicles properly, unless they use bicycle for nearby work, that's a citizen partnership. So what Modi is trying to build is that with scientific effort, with government's action, he wants to involve people also in that program, so it gets ownership. And that's what. Second is forest. We see minerals are in forest. You cannot change it. So you have to dig minerals there. But we are encouraging underground mining, not open cast mining. That's a new. Second is every forest clearance given for any project, the same amount of land, which is non-forest land, a revenue land, is added, is purchased by the project proponent and given to the forest. It becomes a forest land. So forest land doesn't decrease. My forest, and then we make it special amount also they pay as compensatory forestation. And next 6 years, next 5 years, the 14th Finance Commission has given $9 billion, and we, through a bill which was staggered in banks, more $7 billion. So in all, $16 billion for afforestation for next 5 years. It's a huge amount, and we'll continue with that kind of money. As we are growing, we are also having copper spirit. So our commitment for afforestation and individual participation has a logic. Yes.
First of all, I just wanted to say that. Sure. The way the Modi government has embraced the programs. Hi, my name is Makran Dood. I'm a green building expert, and I'm working between United States and India. And we have embraced the programs which the Modi government has launched wholeheartedly. The toilets for all. So we are doing toilets in P Ward in Mumbai, and the Ganga for the Ganga cleanup. We are actually looking at the smaller river. I come from central India, from Bastra, and
Short question.
then after that we are also working on smart cities in central India.
Question.
My question is simple: that when we are looking at some of the innovations and looking at the United States and India partnership, what is that we can do now, just to promote this exchange and this dialogue?
It's See, we value Indo-US is a strategic partnership, so we value much. The Indo-US civil nuclear deal was done in 2008, and that was for nuclear energy, but more about opening the windows and doors of high-end technology to Indian labs. But it didn't happen. So first is that US had to fulfill that commitment, and second is that all countries who have developed various technologies, work culture, everything. See, we can leapfrog. We didn't use pager, which Americans use for generation. We didn't use pager. It was just 1 or 2 years when pager came and disappeared, because now we have 1 billion phones, mobiles. So it's a revolution. It has happened. And therefore, in metro systems, I can say fastest growing metro network is in India. 200 kilometers in last 10 years in Delhi, and 140 kilometers in next 24 months to be added. And they are the cleanest and the best metro system in the world, not with any graffiti. So but we want cooperation in science, technology, and in all fields. We want good things to come to us because we want to be the best. Yes.
Good afternoon, Minister. My name is Sukhvi Bajpai. I am a first year student at SIPA. I have a question on the values and mindset aspect that you just mentioned. If we look at our places of religion, so they are possibly one of the dirtiest places that we can see around. Like, if you look at all the temples, the mosques, irrespective of which religion you go to, you will see dirt. Then I have a second question about implementation, that you spoke about the metro and everything. And you said that how people have to be more involved. I'm from Delhi, and I want to know that in the near future, will we see the Ministry of Environment officials also using the metro or electric cars?
I am using metro. Why my officers? Every time I go to Indira Gandhi Airport, I go by metro because that saves my time. That's it. But more importantly, very important question she has raised. I can tell you, why it is clean today? Because New Delhi station, the regular station is there, and just elevator down there is a metro station. So one above is not that clean, and down below it is 100% clean. So I went and I stopped for 1 hour there. I asked everybody, why you don't throw papers here? Why you don't do this? Oh, they say there is camera, and they immediately challan and fine. So that's important. See, in America, if somebody stops at traffic signal at 3 a.m., though there is no policeman, it is not because there are saints only who are taking birth in America. No. But it is because they receive by email the challan next morning. And therefore, that is the first. Hindi mein, we say in Hindi, sote mein bhi dand jata hai. So what happens is that's the rule of law. And second is that becomes habit. And when the child sits with his father or mother, papa or mom, then when he drives with discipline, it becomes samskar. So that's how things happen. And we are on that road. And that's what Modi ji. Clean India many things will be done. I have done now new waste management rule, because waste management is the basis of clean India. And that now we have done a large people participation. We have lakhs of suggestions, and now we are doing it on from 1st January 2016. We'll have new regime of waste management, plastic waste, e-waste, solid waste, construction demolition waste, biomedical waste, hazard waste management, all we are doing and upgrading. We want their technological support. So all this will continue.
We have time for one short question and one short answer.
Yes, I will.
Good afternoon. I was just curious to know what exactly, going back again to your graph, I was curious to know what exactly you and the government is doing to get funding for all your projects.
No, basically we are planned for our own resources, from our own resources. But if world provides, because I believe in innovations, so innovation technology, what is Make in India? Make in India is today, if Google person and the Facebook or other CEOs, Windows, they are Indian boys here. So we are saying that come back, innovate, invest, and make in India, and sell with pride as made in India. So that's one program of the story. But second is, we will continue to cooperate and have cooperation with all world countries, particularly developed world, because they can offer us affordable technology and finance also where required. But actually now we are giving loans to IMF. So
Minister, I want to thank you for sharing your time with us. I want to thank all of you for coming. We very much look forward to hearing the announcements from the government in the next few days and to seeing India's vigorous participation in the Paris talks. I want to thank Columbia Law School, the SEPA South Asia Association, the Columbia University Coalition for Sustainable Development, and the SEPA Environmental Coalition for making all the arrangements on such short notice. I want to thank the David Sive Memorial Fund for supporting this, and to make the very important announcement that there is pizza outside for all. So thank you all.